This afternoon, a telephone conversation took place between Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. By the way, this is already the 8th telephone conversation between them. The discussion was lengthy, lasting almost 2.5 hours. It is clear that it was highly substantive and at the same time an extremely candid and trusting conversation. Our president began the conversation by congratulating Donald Trump on his successful efforts to normalize the situation in the Gaza Strip. This peacemaking activity of the U.S. president is highly valued in the Middle East, in America itself, and in most countries around the world. Naturally, Russia's principled position was outlined in favor of a comprehensive Middle Eastern settlement on a generally recognized international legal basis, which would guarantee sustainable peace for all people in the region. Special emphasis during the telephone conversation was placed on the issues of the Ukrainian crisis. Vladimir Putin provided detailed assessments of the situation, emphasizing Russia's interest in achieving a peaceful political diplomatic resolution. It was particularly noted that during the special military operation, the Russian armed forces completely hold strategic initiative across the front line. Under these conditions, the Kyiv regime resorts to terrorist methods, striking civilian targets and energy infrastructure, to which we are forced to respond accordingly. Donald Trump repeatedly emphasized the need for a swift establishment of peace in Ukraine. The notion that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict turned out to be the most challenging to resolve in all of the U.S. president's peacemaking efforts was clearly present in his statements throughout the conversation. Of course, he mentioned in this context his successes in settling 8 other regional conflicts. It is notable that one of the main theses of the American president was that ending the conflict in Ukraine would open up tremendous prospects for the development of economic cooperation between the U.S. and Russia. Incidentally, on both sides, there was talk of deep mutual sympathies among the peoples of both countries, vividly manifested during World War II. It was emphasized that the current state of bilateral relations looks paradoxical against this background. The issue of possible supplies of long-range cruise missiles Tomahawk to Ukraine was also touched upon. Vladimir Putin reiterated his thesis that Tomahawks will not change the situation on the battlefield, but would significantly hurt relations between our countries, not to mention the prospects for a peaceful settlement. Against this background, it is noteworthy that the presidents discussed the possibility of holding another personal meeting. This is indeed a very important moment. It was agreed that representatives of the two countries would immediately deal with the preparation of the summit, which could be organized, for example, in Budapest. It is also worth mentioning separately that our president highly appreciated the personal efforts of the spouse of the U.S. President, Melania Trump, in reuniting Russian and Ukrainian children with their families and asked the U.S. president to convey the best wishes to Melania Trump. Overall, I would say that the telephone contact between the presidents of Russia and the U.S. was very useful and both leaders agreed that they would remain in touch. Thank you for your attention. Yuri Viktorovich, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
Donald Trump stated that a high-level AIDS meeting will take place next week, which will precede a summit or meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. It is known that Secretary of State Marco Rubio will represent the U.S. delegation. Do we know who will represent our delegation from the Russian side? I already mentioned that the presidents agreed that representatives of the two countries would begin working on preparations for the summit. This work will evidently begin with a telephone contact between Secretary of State Rubio and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov. May I ask one more question? Based on experience, when might such a high-level meeting take place? I just said that the respective representatives will discuss this issue. The discussion will start in the coming obvious days with a telephone contact between the U.S. Secretary of State and the Russian Foreign Minister. As the representatives work, as the Foreign Minister and the Secretary of State work, it will likely become clear when the summit can be organized. Who suggested choosing Budapest? I can say that Budapest was first mentioned by President Trump, and our president immediately supported the idea of holding a possible summit in this European capital. Can I ask another question? You mentioned that the Russian president congratulated Trump on a successful peace plan for Gaza. Did Trump, in turn, congratulate the Russian president on his birthday? You know, honestly, it didn't come to that. I can say that the conversation took place at our initiative, but no one raised the issue of the birthday. No, it wasn't addressed. The birthday was on October 7th. It's long past, isn't it? Or is this of concern to someone? Yuri Viktorovich, Trump will have a conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tomorrow. Did he say whether he would make a decision on supplying Tomahawks before meeting with Putin or if he would postpone this decision? Trump mentioned that he is meeting Zelensky tomorrow and also said that during the contact with Zelensky, he will take into account the considerations expressed by the Russian president during today's telephone conversation.